Hi everyone, welcome to the Superhuman Switch podcast. Today I have a special guest. Actually, we have Ali Salama, Forbes 30 under 30 social entrepreneur, speaker, podcaster, ex-pro athlete, I'm going to cover this point, and the Middle East mental health ambassador with a life mission to increase the awareness and conversation around this topic. Founded in 2019, EMPWR. We're going to cover a little bit about this topic also because I love this kind of these interesting concepts, where it is the first mental health and wellness magazine in the Middle East. And in 2020, he started the podcast called Empathy Always Wins. I love the name. He speaks about the mental health. He attended sessions with the United Nations, World Health Organization, and the MIT Arab Conference. Ali, welcome to the show.
So fun. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's nice. And again, we discussed several times how we met also in one of the cafes just to have like a quick intro discussing both Conscious Baboon and EMPWR. And we realized that we have a lot of common interests and common topics. And the conversation is still on. Ali, I will start with your scope and the focusing on the mental health. When did you realize that mental health is your topic and why?
Look, I actually never imagined that I would do this. I think, I was an athlete. I was a locker room boy. I was I went to high school here in Dubai. And it wasn't until I went to university in Canada and I struggled big time. I had to resort to professional support or else, I just don't know where I would be, you know? And I think that this was when I was at a breaking point. And I was studying entrepreneurship, innovation, and strategy at Ryerson University. And a part of my graduation project was to prove an idea. There's a need for all the education that we've done.
Okay.
And that was when I launched EMPWR on a Snapchat swipe up form, and it blew up. At the time, it was called Break the Silence. It was for Egypt's main Gen Z demographic. And little did I know, everyone had something on their chest they couldn't talk about. And that was when I made it my lifelong mission to make sure that the stigma was gonna, I don't want to say be broken, but the stigma was gonna fade away in a way that was going to be done through great marketing, great advocacy, and the thing that I realized as well that maybe helped a little was that I was a guy, and that all the girls found that to be different. And I think that was something that helped in the messaging, because when you type the hashtag mental health before COVID-19, it was very feminine dominated.
That's true. It was sort of a taboo, even of, I think, from the female side. It was not a topic that you can easily discuss it openly.
Yeah.
And again, maybe COVID exploded this topic and
100% it did.
But I think what again we're gonna cover your part of the equation, because you mentioned that you went through this journey.
Yeah.
And you realized that I need to do something about it. How did you handle it personally, and how you came up the switch that I need to do something about it?
Look, I think that for me, I had always spent my university years. It was very difficult for me. University was the most difficult time in my life. I didn't find it easy to make friends for so many reasons. I was in downtown Toronto. I had my own condo. I didn't go to orientation, the condo where all the people lived who lived from abroad. So Toronto is a very busy, it's like New York City. It's the New York City of Canada. And some people have two jobs. They come to university. Like, it's not the place to socialize at university. It wasn't a campus-based university. It was a city-based sort of university. So that made it very difficult for me.
Yeah.
Even in just extracurriculars, I just didn't, for some reason, maybe it was a little bit of homesickness, like every single sort of factor played in that role.
Yeah.
But how did I deal with it? It was just a time where I got super close to my mother at that time. And it was, Ali, like, if, you have to do something you've never done before to kind of get to that place to overcome this hardship.
Yeah.
And that was when it was the first time in my life to speak to someone about what was going on in my mind. That was a difficult point, but I realized that journaling, I realized that also the techniques that that I was able to do at home, because I'm a very big reader. I mean, in those 4 years, I probably finished more than 300 books.
Amazing.
I became my best friend, but I also understood that there's so much power in having agency within yourself. What do you do that will allow you to live a better quality life? And as Ali, that's something that I understood how to be mentally tough. I was a professional swimmer, so I would swim, sprint, fly, and freestyle 50, 100. So I understood this mental power, but I didn't understand how that could be applicable in very tough times in life, in times where you have no one to speak to for weeks, in times where you have to really make tough decisions, and in times where it's survival mode. Because I think solitary confinement is the worst sentence you can ever be given. That you can live if you don't focus on all the elements of well-being, including your social well-being.
That's really interesting, because I started to notice that most of the individuals who move to another environment, especially that when you are going abroad to continue your studies, they have this kind of a phase to a new environment, to build up relationship. And at the same time, it's not easy to get in touch with your family or friends back home to speak about your struggles. What you mentioned about the sport and how this kind of mental resilience and toughness, also I think we did it most of the time. We do it, but we don't know how this can be applied on real life situations. And it's quite. I love the idea of empower and even the podcast we're gonna cover a little bit. How you are how are you delivering this to the young generations?
So here's the thing with Empower. You see, like the logo here. It's like. It's almost you almost think of it as a sports logo, because I've really tried my best to come up with a concept that's bold, that's hard. It's like the 3 stripes of Adidas, but it's not, because the basically the first 2 stripes before you go into the chat box or like the speech bubble, it's basically super interesting in the fact that it represents the complexity of the layers of the human mind before you talk.
Okay.
No one's we're all like onions. You can't just peel someone without being empathetic. You have to understand that human beings are complex. And as a strong guy myself, I couldn't understand that in order for me to talk, I had to be very, very, very easy on myself and understand that sometimes vulnerability is strength, because you can't get to the other side without embracing your weakest side. And that's by doing so many tests. They do that even with soccer or football players before they enter. What is a medical? A medical shows you where you're weak and strong, so you know how to work on yourself and improve. So with Empower, the whole brand was you're utilizing. So it's me power. If you actually twist EM before power, it's me power.
Now I see it clearly.
and then people are like, why is there a full stop? It's because if you don't know where to put your full stop in your life, everyone's gonna stamp on you. Like full stop, the period is your boundary. You cannot be powerful and empathetic and vulnerable and just an overall great human being without knowing how to filter your life. So with people that are telling you, Ali, you're so kind. But I have a full stop in my life.
Exactly.
So where is your full stop? And this is why the whole brand came together as Empower. And
it's the concept is clear, and I love it, and I like the fact that it can have a ripple effect on how people can engage with the platform, and that can have a nice message. But is it just focusing on how the young generation, because you've been involved in like Speaks and with the health organization with United Nations, how did you realize that can have not only speaking out to the young generation, where you can increase the awareness and the knowledge of the people on the high level, where they can open up about this topic? So
like I understood earlier on that C-level executives need to understand that empathetic leadership is truly influential. And by understanding how to influence others, you have to really tap into what drives them on an emotional level. And that all ties to mental wellness and mental health. So I started the podcast Empathy Always Wins, and I got whether it was women NBA players, whether it was C-level executives, whether you name it, I got people to talk about something that they probably have never spoken about in a way that showed a little bit more human centric sort of modalities to their approach to the way they see and view life. And whether it was, you know, as simple as, you know, greeting someone and asking them, hey, how's your kid doing today? I remember you said that they had an after school tournament. Like, that level of depth can sometimes make or break the way someone sees you as a leader, and thus build loyalty, and thus become a high performer. Because now you have a lot of people that aren't really feeling that they belong somewhere. And I think belonging is the word that we are looking for in the 21st century as companies, as leaders, as even employees, as members of any civic society. When we don't belong, we feel left out. And when we feel left out, we feel less engaged. And when we don't engage, we sort of fall into this rut. But when we do belong, we're more engaged. When we engage more, we're more connected. When we're more connected, we're high performers. When we're high performers, we keep innovating, and that's what drives humanity and civilization.
That's a cool way of looking into it, because I strongly believe that we are social creatures.
Absolutely.
And most of the times, or the tough situation that we go through, we need to speak out or like create the connection, because most of the cases you look into it from one dimension or one perspective, where you need someone to give you like a different angle to the situation you're in. And this is where, it opens another channels, how to mitigate what you're going through, and at the same time to come up with like better solution to carry on with your life. The question for you now, since you've been on the journey, you have a lot of knowledge about the mental health. How do you apply it on yourself on daily basis, let's say?
Yeah, so I was just, talking to you off the record, journaling. Like, for me, it's definitely not an easy time right now for me, where there's so many things happening, raising funds, doing all that stuff. And believe it or not, it's always going to be a tough time being an entrepreneur or launching a new idea. None of the greatest had it in an easy way. So the habit of taking care of yourself, it's actually a habit. I call it a habit. So the way I take care of myself is, number one, I really make sure when to respond to certain messages at certain times. I know that anyone can have access to you or me at any time if they have our numbers. So understanding how to prioritize according to your time and manage your time, this is so important. And time management for me is an art. It's understanding what I can do, when I need to be productive, and when I need to respond to people, because at the end of the day, I need people as well. But I also need to understand that we are a generation full of distractions. We're so distracted 24/7.
True.
I don't have notifications on social media on my phone. The only notification I have is WhatsApp. So I need to manage that, and I find it even hard to do that. So number one is time management. Number two, I would say, would be what I do the first thing in the morning. That is, I journal. I try to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to just sit on my yoga mat or my fitness mat and just visualize how I see the future, in my mind. What exactly is the culture I want to build? Because we forget it. With stress, with whatever we're going through, it becomes so hard to get that laser focus and that vision. And not everyone is fortunate enough to have a vision of how they want to create what they want to create in their life. And by we call it in the world of sports, mental training. Mental training in the world of swimming, and some of the world's top athletes even do it before they race or before training. They have 5 minutes and they play their biggest race in their minds. From the moment that they enter the منطقة الإعداد, the area of prep, to imagining with their 5 senses, what is this place smelling like? What can I hear? To them walking step by step to the race, to the place where they take off. And what do they feel? They're entering to the water, the umpire blowing the whistle, to them being in the water, to how they take their first strike. And sometimes when I would do it, I would almost, my goggles would fall, and I would repeat it again. Well, why did that happen? And I would almost try to mimic reality, and that is scientifically proven to be in a very effective way. And I call it that, mental training. However bad you want to call it.
It's not far from true, because I listened to some of the references when it comes to the athleticism, mainly, and that how you look into the visualization, and beyond that, even they look into like a structured routine that they can go through during the training, during the competition, where they have a system that they can follow. And the same time, before the whistle or the actual competition, they visualize. I had the chance also to discuss with Mark in the first episode, and even with Chris in the third one, because they one is cyclist and the other one is ultra runner, and they have the same application of visualizing. But my challenge, basically based on the discussions, is the balance between visualizing the failure and the same time visualizing the success, where you can leverage on the failure to make sure that it's like a drive.
100%. And that's the thing. The biggest part of us visualizing was our coach used to tell us, okay, when you finish the race, what was the time that you got? And we almost had to like see what time we got. And that you kind of let your subconscious take control.
True.
And then you say, well, why did you do this? And then you'd repeat it again until you got it. And it almost sounds stupid to someone who hasn't done it before. But in my mind, you have to be there before you're there. Because, you know, whether that's, you know, having kids or whether that's having a performance or whether that's a keynote, you have to understand, because we spoke about that. Luck is 70% prep. Luck is 70%.
I cannot agree more. Again, you can spread the seeds, and you think that it's not having any kind of outcome of it, but later on you figure out that, okay, I did this thing that eventually led to something really interesting, and this is where...
And coming back to mental health, by the way, I just don't want to forget that point. I truly believe after the condition that I had, and I was diagnosed with clinical major depression in Canada, I believe my mind hasn't fully ever kind of recovered from that. So because I believe it's like an elastic band, right? When you go certain areas in your mind, yes, you almost there's a stretching point that, or there's a breaking, or it's deformed some way, shape, or form. So I have to be very cognizant that I know sometimes I can go back, and science is like the research has showed us that you're more likely to kind of experience different mood swings when you actually have gone thus far. But there's a beauty there, and the beauty is to be very much so cognizant that taking care of yourself now is more important than ever. So that's why I practice even when I'm feeling amazing to take care of myself even more, because I know that it's part of my lifestyle now, and it's my responsibility to take care of myself. So I think going back to that point of the hardship that I faced, I think it was a blessing in disguise, because sometimes if I didn't go through that period, I wouldn't have had that ability to speak the way I speak or become this emotionally intelligent.
That's the follow-up question about how you figured out your passion about the topic and how you made this as a purpose. And I watch you on several occasions, and I listen to your podcast, how you're passionate about this topic. But do you think that this is a treatment for you, and by using this treatment you are cascading a nice message?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, so many times when I spoke at the WHO or at Harvard or elsewhere, I think people who have lived experiences come from a different angle than doctors or psychologists or psychiatrists. For me, my biggest goal was to create an impact through storytelling. I think, you know, you can have a great shoe brand from a great designer, or you can have Nike. They're both different in the way they approach things.
True.
I love how Nike brands and storytells. I think there's huge power and impact there. That doesn't mean that I don't think you should listen to professionals. Absolutely, you should listen to them, and I listen to them.
Seek help and
but
support.
But I think it's two different ways. I think by listening to someone who's able to articulate well, that's just communication. I communicate experiences, lived experiences in science, because I believe I'm a voice, I'm a messenger, that's it. I don't believe that, and I was asked to kind of do some education, do a master's, but I'd rather launch a platform that allows others to do that while being a voice, because I know where my best skill sets lie, and I know that I'm not someone, I don't like studying, I don't like doing all that.
Going back to the self-awareness and driving the mission by knowing exactly what are your strengths.
Exactly.
What's the core mission of EMPWR? Because we discussed this again.
To allow young people to live better quality lives. That's it. Through a better awareness, services, and an integrated ecosystem.
Love it. And what about empathy always wins? Because it has the same, but it was more focusing on the empathy.
Yeah, I think there's empathy and there's compassion, but you can't have compassion without having empathy. So the purpose of Empathy Always Wins is to drive a conversation around how we can lead with emotional intelligence and how we can apply that to be more compassionate, because I think that is the winning component in this day and age. I think if you don't have this this level of emotional intelligence, you won't be able to understand, even in the sales or fundraising process, you have to know that you can deliver one message in 500 different ways. But by reading the person in front of you, by understanding what makes them tick,
The audience.
you are able to, and even the audience, you're able to formulate a way, and that is the master of communication. I think that if you're able to master communications, you're able to shape your body language. If you're able to have a different way you use words, like I would use some words with my friends I probably wouldn't use here, but the way that you do that allows you to better hone in on your messaging.
I love this topic because the public speaking is always something that I find and enjoy it surprisingly. Despite the fact that there is a concrete study shows that it's 70% of the people, they have the fear of like stepping on stage, and the 30% they are lying about they will, which is reality everyone, and there is like a certain kind of phobia about stepping on stage and public speaking. But what I really liked about the content that they deliver on stage depends on the audience, and even through the podcast, it has the same kind of a message with different tonality. And
Absolutely.
you covered this point, but that's only, I believe, that is defined by a certain purpose.
Yeah.
But circle around this topic and about speaking with executives and the big events, what is the first challenge based on your observation about the people that they are and the decision-making positions about this topic, and how you think that on the corporate culture, how this will have a ripple effect or like a domino effect on the organization and the people, especially for the young generation. And of course now everyone with the sensitivity about, shall I join a big corporation? Shall I join startup with a lot of flexibility? It's a bit complex, especially now post-COVID. So what's your observation on that?
I think it comes down to one thing, and that's how do I measure mental health? Like, how do I know it's affecting, and what's it costing my business? And I think that, when you tell someone it costs your business, like, per employee, a couple of thousands of dollars a year by them losing productivity, turnover, it's a $1 trillion global business, like if not a few trillions actually. But the hardest conversation when you speak to C-level executives is it's not tangible. And to get them to believe in something that they can see, and there's 100 million ways of measuring it, that's when you kind of have to have their buy-in in a much more long-term manner. Like, there's studies right now that prove $1 spent on well-being returns a $4 return. So, what does that, like, so many people ask, well, what was that study like? What really
what are the metrics?
Yeah,
where
like,
are the findings?
The sample
what
size? Activities drove that? Like, who did this? Where is it relevant to our culture?
These corporate questions, I know them. I know them very well.
and then I'm like, well, just do it. Just test 1 year your employee engagement versus another year. Have a little bit of an investment, do a few trials, and then understand what is it that will make your employees happier. Because at the end of the day, I get this from a friend of mine. She's called Farida Osman. She's an NCAA champion, a 4-time or 3-time Olympian. She told me happy swimmers are fast swimmers.
That's true. That applies in life, by the way.
And in life, when you're happier, you're not just faster, you're more productive, and you're contagious around others. And that's the environment I believe all corporate executives want.
That's this topic, it's not a taboo anymore, by the way.
Yeah.
This is the good thing. And surprisingly, it started globally and started to have this reflection, or started to have the impact here in this part of the world, in the Middle East. Where, again, I'm not going to tap into the cultural differences and how they look into this, about being tough and hard for male and female. And the whole topic is a bit complicated. But what I started to notice that some of the governmental bodies, they're starting to really take ownership of that topic.
Yeah.
And I have an interesting guest discussing basically the topic of like how to take care of the employees. A lot of actions or initiatives been taken, but I think the observation now to make sure that this is a long-term kind of like initiative that drives the well-being in a holistic way and not on a tactical level.
Yeah.
But what are the challenges that you noticed in this part of the world, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East, even of course Egypt, that in your opinion, what are the concrete actions that can have a long-term impact?
Yes, that's one word. I'd say media. You know, you compare the West, and by saying the West, I mean the UK, Canada, US. They have millions of dollars spent from government in media to include celebrities, key people of influence, to make this message not a company's message, but to make this a nation's message. I think by influencing people, and I believe through media, through traditional media, through social media, through digital media, you will find a much more executional level, wider impact on ground.
I see.
By having this, in reports and, high level, there seems to be a little bit of a gap here from the spend that's actually happening in the market from the Agenda 2030. I think by having, a wide countrywide campaign that is inclusive, that's even, year on year consistent, you will find that every year more engagement, and that could be a website, that could be a resource hub, that could be whatever, and doesn't have to cost a lot. But what it needs to do, it needs to be inclusive of the entire ecosystem, because that's what we've seen was very successful in Canada, and Bell Let's Talk is a great example of that.
Okay, but the funny part, because this month is the month of mental health.
Yes,
it's what I don't like about these kind of initiatives, that it's as if it's like a small occasion.
It dies
in a full year calendar.
It dies, and it's not consistent. And I think that it's great that the World Federation for Mental Health have done 10th of October to be World Mental Health Day, but I think we need to move away from it just being an event and activation and la and yalla, let's hop onto the other thing. I think there needs to be a proper mandate that companies, are either subsidized for, up to a certain percentage. That could be a small percentage. It's almost like an incentive for there to be better well-being. I know the UAE is one of the safest countries in the world, and that's a great advantage. But I'm talking about it from a corporate perspective, where, if you're going to operate in the UAE, you at least have to have like a 300 dirham budget per year, 400 for just someone to even seek one session for support. That will transpose us to a different level.
Yeah, I've seen some companies, they took the initiative, and surprisingly now the young generation, when they step into the workforce, they ask this as a perk, that do you provide
absolutely
some sort of a consultancy? And surprisingly, and again, COVID, I will not say thanks to COVID, but the idea that it was an incident in our human that exposed a lot of things that were not taken care of. And again, even my concept, Conscious Baboon, is not driven by that, but again, just to at least take care of your well-being, starting with the mindset, nutrition, movement, and recovery. But at the same time, people started to be aware about the state of mind, which basically driven by like empowered, that everything starts with the mindset and how our brain, and as you mentioned, happy swimmer is the fast swimmer.
Yeah, happy.
Which is, I love it.
I think what we need to kind of work on is educating our kids from a very young age how to sell themselves to themselves. I think it's social media, all the distraction around us is very important. Us being loyal to certain influence, that's very important. But I also think that we need to understand the dangers of misusing those platforms.
Yeah.
Because while I'm all for them, the platforms aren't good or bad. How we use them makes them good or bad. So we need to have, at a very young age, ways to educate them and ways to empower them to understand that those platforms can be platforms where you make income from, where you do all, and those platforms can be addictive, where you lose your self-worth and do all these and experience all those things. So it's a really double-edged sword. And I think that because those platforms have proven to be addictive in the same way hard drugs wire us dopamine-wise.
True.
We need to understand that this isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when we do that, and that's going to cost us a lot. So I just think that we need to understand that at adolescence, most illnesses happen. Mental challenges happen at adolescence. That's when we see young people forming their personalities, forming their points of views, forming their views of the world. And by having some sort of psychoeducation at that point, I think it's a must. It's a must.
That's a practical advice, and thank you for that. It's really tough, especially I have kids 13 and 9, and their consumption of social media. Sometimes you as a parent, you try to at least a little bit apply a little bit of control, but you know for a fact that you cannot take over. This is the reality. But your message about being between passive consumer or creator, this is the mindset that I'm trying to push forward, is to make sure that, okay, you can be passive and try to consume like whatever the content you're interested in. There is nothing wrong in that, but at the same time, try to have this kind of mindset to be a little bit a creator, because this might turn out to like maybe business, maybe like an engagement, networking.
It's consciousness, right? So I think as a father, as someone who might have a voice, it's just a matter of making your kids conscious that, hey, if you're feeling like you're starting to itch a little, or you're starting to get a little bit agitated, or you're starting to like use this tool to just use your time when you have some spare time. Time is very valuable. You know what you can do when you can do that? I think that's when you start to see the power of influence. If you're selling them on themselves, then they will start to use this as a tool. But if you instantly start to disengage with young people, they will start to disengage with you and engage here and then get hooked. So it's a matter of how do you sort of form this relationship with your kids, or relationship with whoever adolescent within your vicinity of influence, and start to actually tell them, you know what you can do, you know how you're special, and then you can use this to kind of share it with the world. And guess what? Despite having likes, despite having followers, you're special, and you're the golden nugget there, not the tool. The tool can change in 20 years, but you're never going to change, and that's worth the investment. So what are you going to do and spend your time? Are you going to spend your time doing you, going to your soccer practice, investing in your craft, or are you going to spend time investing in getting more attention? Because attention dies, but your craft will never die.
I love this, Ali. It's a very nice kind of like perception, and I think your message towards the young generation who are heavily, or basically they born and raised using the social media. And again, me personally, I have no issue with the social media as long as it's consumed or utilized for your own benefit. And I think the way you articulated it, it's perfectly done. What's the best advice now you can give the young generation on how utilize this as a tool? Because you jumped into the podcast and I see the mission behind it, and the other social media, it's like how your practice is now applied on the social media, and what's the main framework in the small definition you can give to any person who want to jump into it?
Yeah, I think you need to understand, first of all, what is your purpose on social media? Is your purpose to consume? Is your purpose to get inspired? Or is your purpose to create? So one thing for me as a creator, I also ask myself, well, how do I want to be seen on social media? Do I want to be seen as someone who's, inspiring others? Because there's only 3 ways you can really like make it or break it on social media. Number 1 is by inspiring. Number 2 is educating. Or number 3 is entertaining. And that's just the law of sort of the social media world out there. So am I going to entertain? Am I going to do pranks? Am I going to make people laugh? It's not really but motivating is part of inspiring. Am I going to educate? Am I going to use this to educate people in a manner? In some ways, 100% I'm going to use it to psychoeducate people in around awareness and around advocacy work. Number 3, inspire. Sometimes I go out there and say like things I wish I heard when I was younger. Like, it's not shameful to be 26 and not married as an Arab. Like, whoever tells you that doesn't understand that your priorities. Like, مش عاوز حد يفرح بيا. I don't want حد, to feel like, but at the end of the day, you need to kind of, I wish I saw that. So I'm creating things I wish existed. So my advice to anyone out there is, if you're going to use social media, number 1, curate your feed. Number 2, understand that the time you spend on social media is time you could be spending anywhere else. So make sure that the time you spend is adding value. The moment that you think that you're wasting time on social media, you're wasting your life. And those are very special moments that you can learn a language. I know some friends right now that speak 4 languages because on YouTube, there's nothing you can't learn. Entrepreneurs who never took a finance class are talking to investors about, future equities and, things that I'm now trying to learn myself. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think it comes back to this one point. We need to teach younger kids to sell themselves to themselves. Self-love is not yoga, mindfulness, and voila. Self-love is prioritizing yourself, understanding your main priorities, understanding how to dream, and understanding how to put goals in a healthy manner, and understanding the progress is happiness. When young kids understand how to progress in life beyond the classroom, they will be not just happier, they will be more fulfilled, and whatever tool they use, that's their world. Whatever they choose.
I'll make sure my son Adam listen to this, because you put it rightly, because he might take me for granted as a father. But I love the way you put it in. What's next for Ali now?
Wallahi, like right now, I'm making sure that I give my best for EMPWR. I think it's very difficult to say that raising funds and this whole process is easy, but Ali will never stop doing Ali. Ali will always be on his mission. EMPWR is always going to live, despite it will be technologically driven. How? It's up for the market to choose. But I'm still trying to adopt that same message whereby I'm not going to let the outcome determine my destiny. I'm going to keep pushing and I'm going to keep determining. And of course, I have bad days. A few bad days are okay, but a bad day isn't a bad life. And I think that when I understand that, yeah, I've achieved this, and this, but there is a little bit of a rut in this process, I always try to give myself credit that I'm still going forward. And it's not about the result, it's about the journey. And I'm sure that, as I keep saying, luck is 70% determination and 70% effort. I also try to say luck is 70% smart determination and smart effort. Not any way. It's not just doing the work. It's understanding, okay, today I did this. This worked. This doesn't. That's why journaling for me is so damn important. I keep asking myself, okay, how can I be better? How can I what am I not happy about? Is the way I'm eating affecting how I'm feeling? Is this person adding or taking away from my life? How is my energy? Do I check in with so all those things while I'm doing EMPWR affect me. And I think that I'm starting to put like 30 minutes to an hour for social media, because I start to feel like it's now my responsibility to have this message. So any sort of journey that Ali is going to be on, it's going to be with this purpose. And I also believe that I have a very strong purpose to understand or to communicate that the Gen Zs, when they focus on their purpose, they can also live the best quality life. Because I also believe to be purpose-driven doesn't mean to sacrifice the financial aspect of life. I think the richer you are within yourself, the richer your life will be.
It's wealth, man.
And that's wealth. That's wealth for me. And I'm truly trying my best to not just embody that, but share that on the way.
And Ali, all the best in that. I love the mission and the purpose you already defined for yourself, and definitely I can believe that you're gonna achieve a success. Where can people find you?
On LinkedIn or on Instagram, and yeah, I'm very much so accessible.
Don't worry, I'm gonna share them with the link. But
Thank
I cannot thank you enough. It was really exciting to have you, and again, we have the same journey so far. But I can wish you all the best, and definitely we're gonna have a catch-up session later on.
Absolutely.
With the success and discussing this important topic. I strongly believe in it. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, watching, and thank you, Ali, very much. If you have any comment, feedback, how to improve on the show, just to give value back, I'm more than happy to listen to. Ali, thank you very much.
Thank you, Safwan, for having me on the show.
Awesome,
Amazing
man.
experience.
Thank you.
Take care.